In this short video, I will highlight the use of Dutch language in law and legal studies in Indonesia. In the first part, I will briefly explain about the use of Dutch in the government. The second part demonstrates legislation in Dutch and its problems in law practice in Indonesia. The final part provides information on how Dutch became a subject in law faculty. It should be self-explanatory that Dutch was the official language of the government during Dutch East Indies. Law and regulation were made and published in Dutch. Whenever the government thought it was necessary for the general public to understand official announcement, translation to other languages and Chinese would be ordered. After effectively occupying the archipelago, the Japanese military government called to a halt to speak and write in foreign language. For unknown reason, the Japanese military government was hesitant to recognize Dutch and employed the name foreign language in its stead. The prohibition fortunately endorsed the development of Indonesian language. The military government assigned a number of Indonesian intelligentsias to translate the vernacular of law, medicine, chemistry, and engineering from Dutch to Indonesian. The result of this project was Kamus Istilah Satu, Asing, Indonesia. Later, the use of Dutch was greatly diminished after the Indonesian government promoted the national language. Until about the end of 1940s, Dutch was still taught in elementary school. After that, Dutch would only be spoken and used by a small number but influential group of Indonesians. Even though the next generation of the elite remained multilingual, instead of Dutch, they would learn English. Most, if not all, legislation that continues to be part of Indonesian law is written in Dutch. Based on the transitory provision of the Constitution, this legislation continues to be positive law in Indonesia. Mr. W. A. Engelbrecht and Mr. E. M. L. Engelbrecht made a compilation of this colonial legislation in what would later be known as the Engelbrecht system. Some of this legislation are the Criminal Code, the Civil Procedural Codes, and the Civil Code. Even though most of the legislation has been translated to Indonesian, none of them is official translation. There was a dispute in Singapore court where the Civil Code was the applicable law. To prove that the law was on his side, one of the parties submitted to the court an English translation of the code. The opposite party, however, pointed out that the law had to be read and understood in its original language, which was Dutch. Agreeing on this request, the judges had to adjourn the court to understand the law in its original language. This event shows that, legally speaking, a regulation must be understood in its original context. A translation is good only to the extent that readers can get insight on the substance in the language they understand. However, the one that has effect of law is the version published in Stadsblad, or the State Gazette of the Dutch East Indies. Translating a text is always a challenging task. Not only the translator needs to convey the same idea and substance to different audience than the original, but he or she also has to adjust the context so that the readers may understand it. Put it differently, while some things may be lost in translation, a translator may add his or her own personal opinion in the translated text. Subukti and Chitrosudipio's preference on their translation of the Berkeley book is a case on point. They admitted that no single word in Indonesian came handy to translate the word zaken. Consequently, they had to employ seven different Indonesian words. On the other hand, they found no proper word in Indonesian for bezit. After considering its meaning in Dutch and following the teaching of Volmar on private law, they translated the word as kedudukan berkuasa, a two-word translation for a single concept in Dutch. The study of law in Indonesia began in 1909 when the opleiding school Tot Itlandse Rechtskundigen, or OSVIR, was opened. This school for training of native jurists was a vocational high school. It only taught a limited number of law courses. Like all government schools at the time, the language of instruction was Dutch. A tertiary study of law began in 1924 when the government opened the Rechtshogeschool. Like Osvier, the law school was located in the heartland of Batavia, which was Koningsplein, now called Merdeka Square. The language of instruction was also Dutch. The first and second generation of Indonesian scholars were taught in Dutch since their elementary school. Therefore, for them it was natural to think and speak in the language. Ali Mudiarjo of these cohorts resolved a doubt from a judge in foreign proceeding on his fluency in the language by answering that even he dreamed in Dutch. The use of Indonesian language of instruction in studying law began only in 1946. Taking the Republic's side in the struggle for independence, Sudiman Kartohadiprodjo refused to join the faculty of the newly established Noord Universiteit. Under heavy surveillance from Dutch intelligence officers, he had to teach law to his students in Perguruan Tinggi Hukum Jakarta in Indonesian. His Indonesian, however, was difficult to understand. His writings were in Indonesian, but the grammar and sentence structure were very much Dutch. Go Kyok-seong, who later took the name of Siddhartha Gautama, captured the attentions of lawyers as well as linguists with his dissertations on mixed marriages. It was the first ever dissertation written in Indonesian. He admitted that his writing used Low Indonesian and too Dutchy. Gautama, however, was the most prolific legal scholar who wrote a treatise on Indonesian private international law and hundreds of books and indeterminate articles in Indonesian language. Even though Indonesian had become the language of instruction, mastery of Dutch remained important. Both Sudirman and Kochai Singh of the first generation of jurists emphasized this necessity. Dutch was never taught as a course in the Rechtschool or the law school. It only became a course in the Faculty of Law of Universitas Indonesia in the 70s, when the new generation of students no longer learned Dutch in elementary and high school. Since 2013, however, it was no longer taught as a course in the law faculty. Students who are interested in learning the language can enroll in the Faculty of Cultural Studies. That's the introduction for our discussion this week. Thank you.